Y'all for being here tonight. This is our combined work session and regular board meeting for the month of April. And I am happy to see each of you here. At this time, we always have a moment of silence, and I invite you to join us if you'd like to. Tonight we have two special guests with us who are going to come and read our Pledge of Allegiance. Cambridge Richards, who is a first grade student at Kiwi Elementary. You come stand right up here. And then Carrington Robertson, who's also a third grade student. All right, if you will stand with me, please, as they lead us in the pledge. And the flag is. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you both very much. I think we may hear some more from them. Josh Holliday, who is the principal at Kiwi Elementary, has our school highlights tonight. We certainly welcome him. And turn it over to you now.
All right, I planned for about an hour, so I saw that. Amanda, you want to come stand? I'm going to put Miss Scott on the spot. She did some of these slides, and I told her she was going to take over here in a little while. So let me say it right. Okay. All right, as you know, we always look at the profile of South Carolina graduate for world-class skills. So we'll highlight some of those. I'm not going to go through and tell you each skill that we do, but a lot of these things fall into those skills with our students daily. So we've got a kindergarten class. I don't know, some of y'all may be aware of this. We've got Chase Pate as one of our volunteers at the school. His mother works for us, and he volunteers every day. We had a kindergarten class, surprised him by publishing a book. So they collaborated with each other, invited him down, had a surprise publishing party for him. So they got to celebrate that. I had tons of things to put in here. I joked about being an hour long. I could go about 3 or 4 hours and tell you all things that we do at the school. But I just wanted to highlight these things for you. So here's some of the examples of the book. Y'all can see those. I'm not going to read them out loud. Chase was very excited when he received his book, and we had a good time celebrating him. I put myself out there. We've had the IXL skills that we work on at school, software that we use, and students can have different diagnostic levels. They pinpoint areas that they need to work on, certain skills teachers can assign. So I challenge our students. I wanted to see from the students' viewpoint what this program entailed. So we had a leaderboard challenge is what they call it, but I challenged our students for 23 days to participate in it, to work on certain skills. It had to be either the grade level below, on grade level, or above. They set me at the 3rd grade level, so I thought I was an advantage, but I was not an advantage at all. But 23 days we participated, and we've got Carrington was one of our top 20 participants, and every day she got out of the car, she said, "I'm still beating you," or "You're going down," or some kind of ribbing every morning, and this was like 100 kids getting out of the car doing this to me every day. So it was really good for my ego. So I practiced. I tried to work on this at home, on my phone. I was at basketball practice doing this, all sorts of time spent, and I was beat. I was not only beat, but I was whooped. They took over, and I think I had 100 skills completed by this challenge. We had students that were in the 300s. So competition's good, and this was students all over the school. We had proficient skills. We had 80%. We had 19 classes altogether participate. And our top 20 students, they had 4,316 proficient skills that they worked on in those 23 days. So it's not just go through and fill out problems and it gives you the proficiency. You had to correctly answer those. I had to go back and answer some over and over again, remember some of them. So that was the language arts part of it. The math was pretty good. So our top classes, it gave them the classes different names. So we had the excellent rattlesnakes. They were averaging 96 skills. And then our ambitious cassowaries, if you don't know what a cassowary is, it's a bird and it's pretty aggressive. So watch out for those cassowaries. That was a kindergarten class. The top class was a third grade class, and they were so competitive, they kept calling Miss Richardson Miss Rattlesnake and Miss Peacock, which she's called Miss Peacock sometimes. Their classes really bonded over this because they were looking out, making sure that one class didn't take over the other. We had a kindergartner figure out that if students answered so many questions or got so many proficient skills, their class average would go up. So not only were they doing math skills in the program itself, they were figuring out problem solving on their own. So I'm proud of them for doing that. And Mr. Gay's here too. He was top 5. So we'll let his class be noticed too. Well, once we finished with the leaderboard challenge, we figured since we worked our minds, we're going to physically work now. So we have a gaga ball pit. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's pretty fun. I had fun. My ankle still hurts from this competition. And I got whooped pretty bad in the academic part of it. I really got whipped in the physical part of it. So I am not young anymore, and I can tell. So if you ever want to see it, stop by a playground one day and check this out. It's a lot of fun. We've also been looking at our reading. We've been working on that. We want a book vending machine in our school. So for a fundraiser, we did a readathon. We raised $6,000, almost $7,000. So here's a couple of our most money raised, our top reader. Ms. Smith, do you remember how many hours they combined with that reading? It was a lot, but our most minutes logged was Miss Averett's class. And we've continued our reading log, so kids are competing. If you come to the school, you will see buttons. They have 25 steps, 100 steps, 125 steps. What's the most so far?
225, I think.
225. So they get the sign on the wall, and they've been competing with that too. They're making it a competition. It's not a competition, but they're making it a competition. Just for community involvement, the Lake and Hills Garden Club, they have a pollinator garden out front of our school. If you want to stop by and see that sometime, it's beautiful. But they also donate a tree every year for Arbor Day. Here's pictures of our second grade students learning about Arbor Day and planting a tree. We do cover of the month every month. We'll start sending that in the newspaper, and because for the request we had the other day, we'll send it to y'all. But we ask our students to choose wisely, use good manners, and be a friend. And those are chosen by their teachers every month, and we recognize them. So here's some of our students here. They're January, February, and March. Just to recognize some of our other students, Tornado Poster Contest winners. Beckett Gully won second place for our 4th graders. One morning I was getting ready and I look up and I hear Kiwi Elementary School, and we had one of our students recognized on WIFF for their artwork with Perella's Pals. So that was really neat to see that. I had to rewind the TV real quick and take a picture, and we've been bragging on her. She did a great job with that. Got our Beta Club induction not too long ago. I'm proud dad because my son is in the Beta Club. He's a lot smarter than his dad. We like to recognize him. Here's our news crew. They give news every week, updates, everything that's going on in the school, dates, things students need to know. I'm proud of my son. He's on that too. So, Cambridge, stand up for a second. Cambridge volunteered his time to go read to the animals at the Humane Society. So we're proud of him for doing that. So I want to recognize him tonight. He was one of our pledge folks tonight. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate you putting the good word out there for Kiwi Elementary School. Just some things that have gone on this year with our swimming and our wax museum. Ms. Holder, you've visited that. Thank you for coming out. Our Veterans Day breakfast. We had our football team open up the doors for our students. So all kinds of things going on at the school. Like I said, I could spend an hour telling you all about these things. Valentine Carnival, our trunk or treat. Yes, I'm the Candyland King down there. That was from our homecoming parade. We participated with the high school, and we appreciate them including us in that. And then Miss Scott put this up here, and she put our fearless leader, and I said, I don't want to be recognized up there. So I love Kiwi Elementary School. So I want to thank y'all for giving me the opportunity to work there. I love the school, I love our kids, I love our staff. We've got some staff members out in the crowd tonight, so I have got to watch a few of them so they don't misbehave. But I'm proud of Kiwi, and thank y'all for for letting me be there. Y'all have any questions for me? Any questions for them? Put them on the spot. They don't mind.
I just want to add, he didn't share, he built that go-go pit, so just a lot of behind-the-scenes things that I wanted to spotlight Mr. Holliday and just how he leads us well and hears about the school, sees the big picture, but the details as well, so thank you all for letting us be here.
Thank you. Looks like a fun place to learn. Thank you.
Oh, Karen just want to read her essay real quick.
Absolutely.
Al Leroy needs to be here because this is kind of an early interview.
Yeah.
Karen,
We'll make him watch the video.
okay.
What's up?
Can we stand up there with him?
Carrington, I'm gonna fix this so you can put it right up here and make sure that you are close enough so we can pick your voice up. You can put it there and talk to the board members.
Absolutely.
My biography. I want my biography to say that I was a good teacher and good at taking care of horses. I want people to remember me as benevolent, steadfast, and friendly. I hope to gain friends, horses, a career, and a teacher scholarship. I worked hard to get a college degree, learn more about horses, and be nice to have friends. I reach my goals by working really hard. I want people to remember me being responsible because people I met say that I'm responsible for my age. Second, people will know I am friendly to everyone. Next, I want people to remember me for being steadfast because whenever my friends need me, I am right beside them. Then I want people to know I am benevolent because I am nice and kind to all. Finally, that is what I would want people to think of me. I hope to gain friends, horses, a career, and a teaching degree. First, a friend is the best thing you can have. They're always beside you in toughest moments. Next, horses are personally my favorite animals. Horses are one of my favorite animals because whenever you are feeling, they know what it is. Second, my teaching career is something that I will love because I want to help people to learn and help show them how to succeed like I did. My teacher degree can help me to be the best teacher. I worked hard to get into college and get my college degree. I went through 5 steps before I got my teacher degree. 1, get good grades. 2, find a good college to attend like Clemson. 3, work at camps with children and learn more about children. 4, pass teacher tests. And 5, apply for jobs. I reach my goals by working really hard. I practiced a lot to get here, and I'm so happy that I reached my goals. I reached my goals of becoming a teacher and getting my college degree at Clemson University. Last but not least, I will be a happy teacher with happy students and happy horses.
Awesome.
I have no doubt you'll be a success, and we look forward to you teaching in Oconee County. Thank you. Yes, and Seneca High School was also supposed to do school highlights night, but their principal is ill, so he will be here on another night. So thank you, Kiwi Elementary, and all of those who came to support the school tonight. We certainly appreciate you being here, especially these students did a great job. Thank you. And now we'll move on to the approval of our minutes, and this is the approval of the April 17th, 2023 work session regular meeting agenda. Did anyone have any changes? So, all right, then they will be approved with no objection. At this time, it's public comment, and I think we have one person here.
Lakeisha Benson.
All right, Benson.
Well, I don't know how to follow that one.
Would be hard.
I brought something for each of you guys. I think I brought me. How are you? And I can talk while I walk. So my name is Lakeisha Benson, and I'm loud. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about, yeah. So I'm Lakeisha Benson, and I am a proud graduate of Seneca High School. Both of my children, my parents, and my grandparents all graduated from Seneca. And I am the executive director of a nonprofit called the NOLA Network. We founded the NOLA Network in 2020 because in 2017, my eldest son, named Barry Benson, suffered a sudden cardiac arrest while he was in college playing basketball. I used to coach track, I was a two-sport athlete, Vari was a two-sport athlete, Ja'Cory was a three-sport athlete for a long time. In fact, both of my children were recruited to D1 schools. Went in, Ja'Cory played football, he graduated last year, as a matter of fact. That being said, we never heard of sudden cardiac arrest, and that was not on our radar. So it was a shock to hear that your 21-year-old healthy athletic son collapsed while playing basketball. However, once we got involved in this, and unfortunately how we found out, I found out that this happens to children of all ages all the time. In fact, sudden cardiac arrest is the #1 cause of death on school campuses, from elementary school to university. Approximately 1 child dies every hour, every day in the U.S. from sudden cardiac arrest, not only in sports participation. So what we do is we provide preventative heart screenings for student athletes, but we also teach students CPR. When Vari collapsed, he was playing basketball with a group of friends. They did not know CPR. I don't know your policies on children, on your teachers knowing CPR, but kids are not always with teachers. We also work with school districts throughout the state and in a couple of other areas to do preventative cardiac drills, emergency drills. Because most of the time, people are not prepared when these incidents happen. It doesn't do anybody any good if you have AEDs if you don't know where they are. And in fact, statistics show that if you do not use an AED on a student that collapsed within the first 3 minutes, then their survival rate drops by 90%. Today, we were talking with a school, Oconee Christian Academy. We'll be doing screenings there next month. And one of the, I think it was the headmistress, or the headmaster's wife, anyway, she knew of it well. She had a good friend who lost a child that was 6 years old at elementary school while playing on the playground. There was an AED, but the teacher that knew CPR, they had to run and get that teacher, and by the time he got there, they did resuscitate him. However, again, if you do not respond in those first 3 minutes, your survival rate plummets. And we don't want that to happen here. Last year, I went to Dade County, Florida. I don't know why I got nervous. I think because I saw Miss Holder, because I talk about this all the time. And I probably got in trouble in her class. And I love you, Miss Holder. But sometimes it's easier to talk to strangers than it is to people that you know. So last year I went to Dade County and I helped an organization there talk to them about it and why they should have screenings in their school. It's a big county. In the Brevard County, I've done some work there, but it makes no sense for me to be able to push these initiatives in other states and not state, and especially Seneca and Oconee County, because that is where my heart is. Again, Vari was graduated before he suffered his cardiac arrest. However, it was his brother's senior year. I don't think that everybody knows about it, but I think what I have found is when parents know about this, they want it. I don't think you have to force people to do anything. You can just present them with the option to say, hey, this is a service that your kids can get if you want it. So we provide screenings again for $20, and that just pays for the cardiologist that we use. And we think, not pushing anything, but we think that it should be offered in all of the schools in this county. Because again, I know how often it happens. You will look it up and you'll say it is rare, but it is not rare enough. If you think about 24 kids a day, that's a classroom of children that most of the time could have been saved. These are not screenings that you would get at a regular doctor's office. In fact, if you go to the doctor, a stethoscope will only catch about 20% of the issues that cause a sudden cardiac arrest. An ECG will catch 96%. We do know there's still times that it happens because there's still that small percentage of chance that it could happen. However, that's why we don't just focus on screenings, but we also focus on teaching kids CPR. If I'm not mistaken, that is a mandate in the state, and it is an unfulfilled mandate because it is not funded. We understand it's not funded, and I harass people at the state level about funding it because I know our schools need help getting it done. However, we will offer that help for free, because it is that important to me. Some of our board members and some of our volunteers are CPR trainers. If you need a certification, that does cost, but research shows that hands-on training is just as effective as a certification. And so we don't know how to help you guys or how we can make it happen, but I cannot tell you how many times I've called schools and left emails and never got a return call. Until this year when Damar Hamlin collapsed on TV and everybody saw it, and then people got more aware, but that was an adult male that had been screened, that had a team of 24 professionals to save his life. But to be clear, he did not collapse, he died. And if that happens at the school, when that child collapsed, they are dead. When your heart stops, you are dead. That should not happen to our kids. Last year, I personally know of 5 students in the state of South Carolina that have suffered cardiac arrest that were fatal. I don't know how many there were throughout the state. I hear about the ones when they're lost. Because people say, oh, and then they connect us. I'm not even scanning the mail for that because I still work full-time and I'm on city council, but people will refer them to me and then I connect with those parents. This year we had a fundraiser where we had several parents, one from, there was a young man, there's been 2 that I know of this school year. One in Greenville, and they came here to Seneca. But I want Seneca to lead the state, or not Seneca, I'm sorry, Oconee County, to lead the state, and I think we could. We shouldn't have to wait for mandates. We shouldn't have to wait for laws to pass. We shouldn't have to wait for somebody to tell you have to do something. And to be clear, there is a law introduced at the State House to have screening statewide. It probably won't pass, but it is introduced. But I don't think we should have to wait for that to offer service if we have it right here. We travel statewide to do this, but we've had a little difficulty getting some engagement locally. Last year, and this is the last thing I'll share with you because I talk a lot and my time's probably up. But last year, we did a screening at the YMCA. We screened 70 kids from Oconee and Pickens County, and we found 5 previously undiagnosed heart conditions. That statistic is astronomical. That's higher than it should have been. However, these were confirmed by cardiologists, and one of those students from Pickens County needed surgery. So that is how real it is. We know that COVID has increased the rates of this, but statistically pre-COVID, there was, the statistics say 1 in 100 kids have a heart condition, 1 in 300 has an undiagnosed heart condition. So I don't know how many children are in each school, but I think Seneca High School has about 900, am I correct?
1,000.
1,000. So potentially there's 3 kids that have an undiagnosed heart condition there. So I just wanted to share you guys the information that about what we do, why we think it's important, and hope that you can support us and that we can support you guys and come alongside to be able to ensure that the students of Oconee County are as safe as they can be. Thank you.
Ms. Benson?
Yes. Hey, Mr. Hanvey.
We spoke several times and we actually had our athletic directors meeting for the high school and middle school last week, and talked with Mr. LeCroy, now on your, working with you or maybe trying to get in with you guys, Carson LeCroy, the head of the Career Center. He's going to be reaching out.
Yes,
Yes.
Mr. LeCroy from,
Yes.
yeah,
He was at Seneca High before, now he's at the Career Center.
I yelled your microphone, sorry.
But we did talk about it, and a couple of the schools had stuff set up, but what we had Carson charged with coming back to you guys, and if we use the Career Center and doing that, even if they get the other part of the physical somewhere else, giving them the opportunity to come do this part with you all, and he was gonna work with you guys to try to get that organized, use some of our, biomed students, our CNA students, and that kind of thing to make sure that it's organized and flows the way it's supposed to. So there was discussion just last Wednesday with the ADs at the middle and high school level and their principals. And so I hope that you'll be talking with Carson soon, and we'll be able to make that happen, doing it on site there and using that facility, and then bringing folks in to give them that opportunity.
You are a man after my own heart. I love you, and I appreciate the help that you've given us in getting in Seneca Middle School and Seneca High School. I will say, you knew someone that had a sudden cardiac arrest.
I did, well, actually, I just saw it on Twitter, and I reached out, the young man was at Dutch Fork High School, and I saw her tweets, and it was just tears your heart up. No pun intended, but
Yeah,
tears your
Kelly,
heart up.
we
And
connected
so I
with
messaged her your information, and she said she was gonna reach out to
She
you.
did, yes, she did. But there, I thought that your son went to college with someone that had one. I
He
know,
did.
I know the principal of Seneca High School, he's witnessed a sudden cardiac
Right.
arrest when he was in college. So everybody thinks it's rarer than it really is. And in fact, I know you talked Shonda Bradley, she had a sudden cardiac arrest as well that was fatal. So it happens more often.
But we're gonna try to get it and try to get it better each year. So that's our goal too.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Let me shake your hand. I'm a hooker, but I can't reach you.
Thank you for the
I
opportunity.
appreciate you. Okay, well, I won't keep talking, but I will read these in case everybody else wants one. Hey, Mayor's daughter, how are you doing?
Thank you for sharing this with us today. Really appreciate it. All right, and is that the only person we have for public comment?
Yes.
All right, we had two sets of minutes tonight. The first one, the March 13th, 2022 work session minutes, and also the March 20th, 2023 regular session board meeting minutes. Anybody see any changes, additions, deletions? All right, then those two sets of minutes will stand approved with no objection. And now, Dr. Thorsland, it's time for our superintendent's report.
I'll be quick tonight because we have a full agenda, but we do have a lot of events. It's the time of year that there are things happening all the time. Starts, I believe, tomorrow night is our elementary chorus concert. We've got an invitation at the place for the art show at Duke Energy, the World of Energy, and of course, retirement dinner, graduations, different concerts in different places. So I'm just going to encourage you to kind of peek maybe once a week at the events calendar that Ms. Bay has for you, because if you don't, you'll miss something, because there's something just about every week between now and the end of the school year. We'll stay busy, but it's an exciting time, a lot of recognition, students getting recognized for hard work and employee recognitions. So just a quick reminder.
Is that it?
That's it for me.
All right. Next, Mr. Schickling, we have the March financial report.
Okay, March financials are, fairly nice and script, similar to really the, most of the operating months since instruction has begun. So we've got, regular state sources of, formula aid, and then, we've collected the majority of our, tax revenue, so we're still seeing some ad valorem taxes trickle in the standard tier 3 payment. On expenditures, it is, again, primarily payroll related to staff, and then the largest distribution as a disbursement is coming out of the capital fund for the Seneca Middle Pay App, 2.9 million there, and otherwise just food service management fees, energy, utilities. We did pay our semi-annual payment for school resource officers. You see a large disbursement there to the sheriff's office. And that about sums it up. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Nothing? Okay, very good. All right, then our next discussion is the FY '24 general fund budget.
Yeah, so I have put together a little presentation. There's a lot going on this year, and the budget proposal is a little bit larger year-over-year increase than it's been in the past couple of years, and there are some reasons for that. So the presentation is intended to just walk us through that and talk a little bit about the economic environment right now at the state level. So, the state has a substantial surplus and is looking at finding ways to increase recurring revenue to schools. The legislature also is discussing a $2,500 increase to every cell in the teacher's schedule. So that's not just the minimums, starting rates, but that's every cell on the entire schedule, which goes from bachelor's to master's to doctorate, and then 25 plus years of experience. So, the state is going to be attempting to couple that with aid to support that, but it's a pretty ambitious objective, which is, part of Governor McMaster's goal of making our wages competitive nationwide with teacher salaries. Just today, we got some more information about transportation, so we'll be looking again at some of the bus driver information in here will need to be revised based upon the legislature and their actions coming up here as the Senate has their conversations on budget. So on the revenue side is where I'll start. So we'll talk about recurring sources of revenue that make themselves available for us to fund our educational programs. You'll see growth in classroom aid related to those state salary scale increases. You'll see growth in homestead tax reimbursements. That is largely tied to CPI. So with CPI numbers being fairly large, we're going to see a large reimbursement factor as well. And then our request for local tax revenue is increased, but it is less than the total collections for the current and prior years. So again, with our objective of live within the growth of a mill and not increase the millage rate, we feel like we would be able to fund all of these initiatives and still meet that objective. So the first slide is about state support, revenues coming from the state. What I've done there is take an excerpt of the only projection available from state finance right now, which is, it's something that they put out every time one of the legislative bodies comes out with their budget. So this is based on the House budget. What you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen is the total increase in state funding. What's important for us to understand here is that there are still some categorical items there. So one of the items is reading coaches. One of the items is career and technology education, or CATE. Those items are not housed within our general fund. So where you see increases in revenue to fund those are going to be held or housed out of separate funds that are not going to be part of what we're discussing when we discuss the general fund budget. You also can see that there's a line item for student health and fitness, and there's no projection there. There's an arrow that loops that down to our state aid to classrooms. The state is consolidating several different line items of funding into our general classroom aid this year. So when we look at an overall increase year to year, part of that increase is going to be taking positions that have not been in the general fund or have been partially in the general fund and increasing them to a full 1.0 full-time equivalent in the general fund. So not only are we looking at the increasing of a standard footprint, but growth in that footprint because positions that were not funded there before will now be mandated to be funded there before. That also includes nurse positions in all of our elementary schools. We get nurse funding that will be consolidated in, and career counselors. So we do have career counselor positions that are funded out of a separate fund that will now be rolled into our aid package and our general fund. So our total increase in just true foundational aid or state support ties out to, in this proposal, $3.9 million. Again, the Senate looks to add some amount of funding to that. We're not clear on how that will break down until we get a projection of the Senate's budget, so this is what we're operating on right now. The Tier 3 reimbursement that I've spoken to comes from the state to the county and then is passed to us from the county, and that is the reimbursement of our homesteaders, homesteaded tax exemptions. So that's largely tied to two items, assessments, but also CPI. So with CPI at a large figure, we're seeing a $1.6 million increase in the Tier 3 payment we can anticipate. So total revenue growth from sources that are outside the county or state sources would be $5.5 million year over year. So that's available to fund recurring expense. In our local effort, then, we look towards the tax levy, or what's collected ad valorem taxes and fee in lieu locally. And I've prepared a local funding history by year so you can see what that looks like as there have been growths as there has been growth in the overall value of assessments in the county. You can see that that's led to increased collections at the county level. And so the most recent years after COVID, as there's been kind of a change in the real estate market, you can see assessment values have increased 6% and 7%. This year to date, we just got our payment allocation report today from the county for the March collections. So we've collected 48.75 million. So we're closely approaching 49 million. And you can see in the past couple of years, April through June, the collections have been close to 2.4 and more than 2.5 million. So very reasonable to estimate that this year we'll collect 51 or upwards of 51 million. So our request for the budgeted value of collections for the district for next year would be 50,300,000, which we would anticipate is below the amount that's being collected this year and last year. So under no means would necessitate an increase to millage rates unless there was some catastrophic decline to the value of the assessments in the county. And I've also put up there, just for comparison purposes, what those millage rates look like in the lowest 10 counties in the state. So again, our goal of operating within the growth of the mill, we're second to lowest in operational millage, only to Pickens County. And as we go through and talk about cost comparisons and compensation comparisons, that's something that I'll reference back to. But you can see that we do operate within a pretty lean footprint from a tax collection standpoint in comparison to some of the other districts around. Any questions so far on the revenue side?
And if I could just jump in, if you take those two blue columns in the table on the right, no matter how you sort that, we're second place. We're second to Pickens in operational millage. We're second to Horry in total school millage. That's a pretty good record of 70 some odd school districts or 46 counties, depending on how you look at it. It's we've got low taxes in Oconee County, and we need to be thankful for that.
Yes, I think, and I think part of the goal of the presentation is to highlight that, this is a substantial budget. I think around the state, as these initiatives are evaluated by districts and they have to budget for the increases in costs and salaries that the state is asking them to do, you're going to see larger budgets. But nothing in this proposal do we feel like can't be funded within the existing millage, not requiring any sort of increase. So for a summary in the consolidated 8 items, the things that have to come back to the general fund or will be put into the general fund, there are 7 career counselors that go from roughly a third to fully funded. The school health positions, the nurses right now are at 20% or 18%. Those will go to 100% general fund, and a couple of teaching positions in physical education go from roughly halfway funded to fully funded in the general fund. So that the aggregate impact to the budget growth is $800,000 of staffing that's coming into the general fund. In the big picture for our revenues, you can see the local sources is listed above. That's the value that we're requesting for the levy. Fee in lieu is also included in there. Our restricted state funding, you can see a little bit of a variance where the restricted state funding is being reduced. The only reason for that is some interplay in how we budgeted last year without knowing really what it would look like to consolidate all of those line items into that funding formula. So some of the EIA, which we transfer in, was budgeted there, and it didn't need to be, and some of it was not budgeted as a transfer in. So that's what leads to that discrepancy. But you can see, on the top line, the increase in the levy request. In that line, that's 3,800 state revenue in lieu of taxes. What you're seeing there is the increase to Tier 3, and a couple of other items that have been reduced to be conservative as to what we've collected in the past. And then interfund transfers, what you're seeing is some of that new EIA formula. And I apologize for how this formatted. I thought that I had these bubbles as call-outs in front of the text, but they didn't translate that way into the printout, so I apologize for that. But that EIA formula is some of those positions that have been rolled in and some additional funding that the legislature usually gives us, and we regularly transfer in. So on the financial report, you'll see it as a transfer in. This year, it's roughly $5 million. Next year, it's going up to low sevens. So all of that leads to an available revenue footprint of $122,061,000. So on the expenditure side, 90% of our district budget is personnel costs. So when we talk about what cost drivers we're going to be seeing, it's mostly related to salary increase, other related benefit increases. The state salary scales and various mandates are driving cost growth, and we need to begin supporting the replacement of one-to-one devices as well, which we'll speak to in there with a replacement plan that we're trying to get into the general fund budget for a sustainable one-to-one program. So on the side of teacher salaries, this has been a prominent talking point for the legislature. The House and Senate have preliminarily agreed with Governor McMaster's proposal to increase teacher pay $2,500 per cell. Now, what I want to stress there is when you look at the salary schedule, that's a lateral move of going from one year to the next as a cost of living. Well, the way it works as teachers gain seniority is they're also going to move down a cell. So not only are they going to move over a cell, but they're going to move down a cell. So they're going to see growth not only in that cost of living, but they're going to see growth in their years of experience as well. So when we hear in the news or when we hear $2,500 per cell, that really year over year compensation wise for a teacher looks more like $3,200, $3,300, depending on where they are on the scale. Then with that growth, we're introducing close to 24% contribution to the state retirement system, almost 8% in Medicare, FICA, Social Security, and then also our health plan, PIBA, is going up. This year it's 4%, but last year it was 18%. And so that's the calendar year, so we've got 6 months of one, 6 months of another. So really our aggregate cost is about a 9 or 10% increase in benefit premiums for employees. So when you hear $2,500 on the scale, that can translate easily to $5,000 or $6,000 of employee cost to the district. And I think it's important just to recognize that. We had been looking at how the district compares with our surrounding counterparts in terms of the competitiveness of our wage scale. So you can see, we were slightly below average at the starting point and fairly average as we went through gradually through the scale. What we're trying to do with our adjustment is go a little bit above 2,500 at the very base level cells to try to be more competitive in those first few years of employment, and then 2,500 for all the cells thereafter to adjust that curve a little bit. So that's what's included in this proposal. In terms of classified positions, this again was some analysis that was done prior to some of the news that's coming out just this week from the Senate. That regional analysis would show that, again, we tend to be fairly competitive in that 15 to 25-year range, but at the lower end of our scale, just to growth over time, we've fallen a little bit behind in some areas. So we already had a plan to kind of graduate our increases, do larger increases at the bottom ends of scales, smaller increases at the top end to try to promote that competitiveness. We'll have to take bus driver off the table for right now until we get some further clarification as to what the state's looking at scale. For the custodian, we do believe that we're going to be able to do that to some degree here. In the classified positions, again, the analysis that we were doing, we were relying upon some assumed growth in other districts' budgets for a cost of living. Again, that's always, we're playing a year behind. We just have to guess what they're going to do. Nobody tells us. But the goal was for the bottom end of the scales to become as competitive as they can and as competitive as other areas in the scale. So the average compensation increase year over year for our classified positions is roughly $1,700. And there's a number of different positions that comprise that. And when you have positions that are not 8 hours per day and not they're 180 days in some cases, it's difficult to reach some of the numbers you would see when you're talking the teacher scale being state mandated or some of the 240-day employees that are 12-month employees. The last item here that I wanted to address is sustaining one-to-one instruction. So in the past several years, the CARES Act was at the beginning of COVID, so it's hard to even think back to 2019, 2020, but that act has been, it's already spent and expired, and that's when we started buying Chromebooks, was out of the CARES Act. So those devices are already becoming end of life as their licenses expire and they become obsolete in terms of their processors. So we currently have we're fully expended on the Coronavirus Recovery Act. We're fully expended on our emergency connectivity fund, which has helped us get teacher devices and some student Chromebooks. So all that's left for us right now is ARP in terms of federal funding. That's the recovery plan. And that expires in September of 2024. So we do have some time, but the goal here is to graduate into the general fund some of the ongoing replacement cost of making sure that we always have student and teacher devices that are under license, that are in good working order, and doing so in a replacement fashion where certain grade levels get them, so that we're not buying 10,000 devices 1 year and no devices for 3 years. So that's what I've been working with Mr. Price, our CTO, to analyze how many devices do we have, what's a realistic expectation for their useful life based on when we plan to replace them, what is the, what's the number that we would need to purchase per year if we take that total and divide it by its useful life, and how much does it cost to replace them. So the total budget needed really would be 1.5 or more million. We've tried to get up to 1 million into this year's budget, knowing that we're gonna have to start expending that as the federal funds expire. And so the last thing here is just kind of a summary of the major factors of growth, what's leading budget growth year over year. The ones that are highlighted in orange are kind of minimal discretion here for us, where we do have, it's related to a mandate, but we do have some implementation control. And those that are highlighted in red or pink are a state mandate that really you don't have any authority over, you just have to implement it. So again, the teacher scale, you're seeing the cost of, and now that's only the footprint we have now rolling forward. That doesn't include the positions that would have to come in. That's in a different line item. So roughly 2.5 million, again, this is general math based on assumptions, roughly 2.5 million for the teacher's salaries, roughly 1.3 or 1.4 for cost competitiveness and cost of living in the classified areas, and how many people that impacts. The monitor positions that Dr. Thorsland has discussed in conjunction with our new policy for unencumbered teacher time. So that impact is, new positions that are an added cost that are in there. And then simply the employer healthcare premium, just the cost passed to us to fund insurance for folks is over $1 million of budget growth. So all those things put together, again, that doesn't account for the total growth year to year in budget, but those are some of the primary drivers that have large dollar figures associated with them. Which leads to a total budget of 122,061,000 tied out to revenues. Some of the smaller areas of growth are, we didn't include administrative salaries in there. There is some cost of living proposal in there. We also didn't include an increase to some of the coaching stipends and supplements. Also, some of the per pupil activity allocations we've increased to make sure that our athletic departments have told us that they're struggling to fund some of their programs. And make sure that the schools have what they need in terms of their supply budgets. So all in all, it's an 8.6, which a large budget, about 7.5% growth. Again, I think you're going to see, as these initiatives are pursued by districts, you're going to see larger budgets than we've seen around the state. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I hope I've done a good job of explaining kind of the methodology of assembling everything.
Excellent job. Comments, questions?
Kind of overwhelming, to be honest with you. Yeah, let me ask this question. Are they still talking about changing the formula for funding to each district from the state level? Have they dropped that?
They made a change last year, and that change is still in place.
Still in place?
Yeah.
They've not talked about further changes.
They haven't. So that one was, there was a specific line item for elementary programs, specific line item for middle school programs, specific line item for career and technology, for example. All of that's been consolidated into what accounts for us about $34 million of aid. And so we no longer have to show that we're spending a certain amount in any one of those areas, but we generally are doing what we've done in the past.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, we will have to vote first reading tonight, so we will have an opportunity to come back and change if anything changes. But I know this is a lot to take in, but it's excellent. We really appreciate all the detail that you put into this, because there are so many mandates and so many things that come from the state that we don't really have any control over, so. Anything at all? Well,
So what's the total that we're gonna be going to Oconee County taxpayers?
122,000, or 122,061,140.
But
Oh, just the county?
Just the county.
50,300,000.
but I think they have to actually approve tier 3 in their allocation as well, because that's technically, so I think it's gonna end up being 66. Well,
Yep.
look at it and see, but I think the, what county council approves has to, the local money, the 50,300,000, but I also think tier 3 gets lumped into there for their final approval, so, it may end up being
65.
65, 66, somewhere in there. But we'll certainly have that ready when we go across the street for our first presentation to county council.
and how soon is that?
Slated for May 2nd.
May 2nd.
All right, so if you look over this and have any questions, I'm sure Mr. Schickling will be glad to entertain any that you might have. And Exhibit 3, community eligibility for food service.
Okay, another one. I'll try to be short-winded with this one, but we have, the state has now shifted to a different method for determining our free and reduced lunch pricing percentages. The community eligibility provision is something we have not been eligible for in the past at the district level, and we now are for the first time. There's a number of districts that are in that situation or circumstance this year. What you're seeing in front of you is a direct cert count by building, so the number of students that qualify for a free lunch by the federal guidelines compared to total enrollment, and what that represents as a percentage. In order to be eligible for CEP, which is community eligibility, aka you can think of it as the fully free lunch program, you have to be at a minimum of 40% direct cert. So you can see all of our buildings at this point meet that. In order to be reimbursed for 100% of your meals served at the free federal rate, you need to be 60%. And so if you're operating a CEP program, but your direct cert rates are in the low 40s, you're not being reimbursed for all your meals. And at that point, there's the potential to lose revenue. When you reach that 60%, you're getting the free federal rate for every meal you serve, regardless of a student's status. And so it is a district-wide, we're at 56%. And so what I'm gonna show you is some calculations that the federal government puts out, the USDA puts out, that helps you determine, is it worthwhile for you to go forward and do CEP. The first one is CEP at a K-8 model. So what we've done is taken a look at just the number of meals we served in the month of March in K-8, taken out the high schools. We have then applied the rates of reimbursement at the federal level, and we have applied our percentages of where our students stand K-8 in terms of how many qualify. And if we go through and do that, you can see that we would be due for a reimbursement. Now I'm looking at the green box on the right-hand side of this calculator. We'd be due for a reimbursement of $436,000 roughly for lunch, $154,000 for breakfast, and that is more than where our reimbursement stood for March for our current operation. Now you can see that with the foregone sales revenue at the bottom, so I've added that line separate of what the federal government's calculation would be to show you that's the money that we would not be collecting from students because everybody's free now. So with that said, in this model, we generally would predict a break even. So we would recoup in reimbursements at fully reimbursed what we would lose in students paying us when they buy a lunch because they're now free. That's if we went forward with a K-8 model. Where it gets tricky is because the high schools, if you look at the first slide, they're in the mid 40s, so they're 15% short of full reimbursement. So if we add them into the picture, and project a full K through 12 CEP, you can see that the meals change, and the reimbursements are greater, but there's also more lost revenue, and the reimbursements are not keeping up with that because we're not being reimbursed for really close to 100% of the meals now. We're being reimbursed for 90% of the meals that we serve. So there we would project that there would be roughly a $60,000 loss in an average month like March, which, you know, you compound that over the course of the year could be fairly substantial. We also have been approached by TNG for renewal. They've seen a 20% increase in their food costs this year based on what, you know, from what they've budgeted. Because we contract out food service, we've gotten some supply chain reimbursement federal dollars that were prohibited from passing through to them. So they don't see the benefit of that as our contractor. That's again a state and federal interpretation. So all of that to say, we can anticipate that our costs will go up next year for TNG's services. And so if we were to operate below where we're operating now and see increased costs, my concern would be that the K-12 model may not be feasible financially, even though it would be beneficial to many students. The K through 8 looks like it would operate about where we're operating now because the increased reimbursements at close to 100% reimbursement would make up for the offsetting revenue we would lose. So I wanted to, rather than speak to that, I wanted to be able to display to you how we come to that conclusion. We have our application into the state. They will review it. So we will have the option of enacting K through 8 or K through 12 CEP for the board's discretion when we're ready to, when we have approval and can move forward.
My recommendation will likely be K through 8.
Yes, based on this information.
Which would mean kindergarten through 8th grade students would not pay for lunch when they go, or breakfast when they go to our elementary schools.
But it would mean the high school level would pay more.
No, they would still operate just like they do now. They just wouldn't be community eligible.
Not change?
I mean, it would change just like it does every year, so there's gonna be a few cents increase in the cost of breakfast and lunch like there is every year, but they would still, if a student is qualified as free, they would still get free lunch at the high schools. What this change would bring about, every student in kindergarten through 8th grade eating free at all of our elementary and middle schools with a very, very slight, I mean, the difference on that first slide there is less than 1%. And that,
and we can't, you know, with changes in participation, we may see more kids participate, we may see less. It's, you know, you can't really project with that level of precision anyway. So really it's more of a close to break even or lose some money type proposition.
and then the benefit of not having to deal with money at the cash register, there's some other improvements there for kids.
Would have no impact to a la carte, kids being able to pick up extra meals, extra items, things like that, but just your general reimbursable lunch or breakfast would be free.
Any more questions? All right, so we will look at that when it comes in. And Mr. Hammond now, possible social media litigation.
Yes, ma'am. I gave you a little packet when I came in, set it by your spot. It's just a memorandum from the attorneys that we worked with on the Jewel lawsuit. Again, those awards are coming out after they figure out all the fees and things, but they reached out to ask, and there's a lot been going on about this. You've seen it at the national level, even Congress debating with TikTok, whether it's going to be allowed. A lot of states have implemented that if it's a state-owned phone, you can't have the TikTok app and that. And it's not just TikTok, but TikTok is one of them. We see a lot of issues with Snapchat messages, with social media messages back and forth that creates a lot of our problems. And I'm not one that, you know, likes to say you just need to sue people or whatever, but they reached out and asked because this is something that has come from the president all the way down through the system where people are talking about the mental health issues, the screen time and the things going on social media have increased, and how it impacts the school district, just kind of like the Jewel lawsuit did. You know, we still, by the way, are dealing with vapes, you know, on a daily basis. But hopefully from that money that would be collected, we'll be able to do some educational things. We've already talked about some things we might want to do. This is something I just wanted you guys to have and read. There's no rush to it. I wanted you to be able to look through. It's 5 pages. I didn't feel like we could just go over it all here. Let you look through it. You can send me any questions you have. I can reach out to the folks that have reached out about it if there are questions, and just see if it's something you think that we need to have deeper discussion on and show interest in. I know that Ms. Hughes would tell you that a lot of the things she deals with in her expulsion hearings and that on social media and that with the kids and things. But again, I'm not one who just wants to sue, but you know, if it helps our students, the mental health of our students, or provides more mental health workers for us, or whatever we can do to fund the money, then it'd be something I think we should at least let you look at and tell me which direction you'd like me to go.
All right, so if everybody will take a look at that. And now we've got 2 pieces of property that we need to discuss.
We do, and I think I pulled it up and on my computer, and back in I think it was around February, but Mr. Canada wrote an article over there about the a $3.445 million grant awarded for a Black History Trail in Seneca and Clemson. It's a joint effort between Clemson University, the city of Clemson, and the city of Seneca. And so the focus was in February on African American History Month. So they want to use this grant to do a trail and an area to recognize the Black history in Oconee County. And they were specifically looking around the Perry Hill area, and that leads us to the Blue Ridge Field and the Blue Ridge Community Center, which used to be code for us before the board agreed to give those to the Blue Ridge Community Center. In order for the city to be able to be approved and sign off on the grant, they have to have that property in their name. When we deeded that property to the Blue Ridge Community Center, the board did that, and we included in there basically a reverter clause that if for some reason that group wasn't able to keep it up and maintain it and use it the way we felt like it needed to be, or they felt like it needed to be, then it would return to us, and then we would be responsible for doing whatever with the property, whether that be cleaning it up, you know, raising it and trying to sell it, whatever. That clause keeps this grant from being acceptable in the city of Seneca and by the grant guidelines. So an attorney had reached out to us a few weeks ago asking would we be willing to change that and instead of a reverter clause, let that become the city of Seneca's if something happens to the Blue Ridge Community Center and their ability to maintain that. So what we are looking at is doing away with the reverter clause. Per Mr. Mulder, he said the city of Seneca would be willing to take that on, and if we would do a quick claim deed through the attorneys, that can change that wording around and make it where if something happened with the Blue Ridge Community Center, both the field and the former building, the former code and the former Blue Ridge High School would be turned over to the city of Seneca, and then it would become their property, and they would decide if they were going to use it, if they were going to tear it down, if they were going to do something with it. We don't want it to be 20 years down the road and it be something that nobody has maintained and becomes something that's a problem for the community. So we would like for you to consider, and we'll ask you to vote on it later, that we be allowed, Dr. Thorson and or myself, whoever, be allowed to get that deed changed and do a quick claim deed so that we could eliminate the reverter clause to the school district and put it to the city of Seneca.
And that would just simply, I think fairly frequently nonprofits, sometimes nonprofits cease functioning as a 501c3 in South Carolina. If that ever happened, we put the reverter clause in there just so we could go in and take care of the property, because an old vacant school building is terrible for a community. And we felt like we wanted to be good neighbors, but in exchange for giving up Blue Ridge Field, Mr. Mulder told me that the city would certainly take on responsibility for that property. So if something ever did happen and the Blue Ridge Community Center, not that we expect it to happen, but if it ever did, that they didn't exist or didn't operate like they are now, then the city of Seneca. I think we're recommending that's good. We just don't want a building to be an eyesore, but as long as the city of Seneca will agree to take care of it, then we're good.
And that keeps us from separating the field and the building and having just, we don't need the field. So it's just easier in our minds and makes sense because they can't get the final sign off on the grant until they get that in the clause.
And the deed is laid out to the Blue Ridge community?
They would, yes.
Community
Center.
Blue Ridge Community Center.
All right.
And if you choose to vote tonight, you'd be voting to just take away any reverter clause in that original contract to the Blue Ridge Community Center. So we would, and Steve or I would sign off on that.
And I would, we would work, there's an attorney out of Greenville that has been reaching out to us. I would let her know and have her draw up the paperwork and work that out.
Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Okay.
So that grant only entailed redoing that cemetery and then the part that came down the side of the building and Blue Ridge Field.
Right.
So we're not in any way going to put that building in a situation where, like you say, it could become vacant and non-usable. In other words, I want a deed the city to get that area to go through with the grant. Then you've got the building over here that is, as I recall reading through all that, is not part of the grant.
That's right.
Right.
So,
But it is on the same deed, so there's like 5 different parcels of land listed on there because of the way it was set up. So the field is one of them, the building part. So the building would be included in the part that would go to the city of Seneca.
so
if
Blue Ridge
Blue
Community
Ridge-
Center went away, then the city would have all.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just want to be clear about it.
Yes, ma'am. Any other?
And I personally spoke to Mr. Mulder last week, and he's indicated that was fine with the city.
Is there any indication that if they don't get the grant, and we've already done all of this, are we still just honoring?
The grant's been approved, it's just waiting on, it can't go through our,
That's-
goes like the Clemson University part and the city of Clemson part can begin, the way I read it. They just can't do the city of Seneca part until they get this change for them. So the grant has been approved. Usually, it's kind of gone in reverse. Usually you would do the other part first and this, but it's kind of gone in reverse. I don't know that they knew the full details of what we had put in the agreement with the Blue Ridge Community Center.
So all you're asking us tonight is that we remove the reverter clause?
That's right. The property, we gave the property to Blue Ridge Community Center. As long as they operate, they own the property.
Right.
They just can't deed
Right.
the portion to the city because of our reverter clause. We're just releasing the reverter clause. That's it.
Okay? Anything else on that?
Anybody have any more questions? I guess not. All right, the Gillette Field property.
Yep. So the Gillette Field property, basically back in 2009 or so, the district gave the building areas there that are used for the gym in Gillette and the other parts that the city uses, and then the part that DHEC uses, that was deeded to the city of Seneca. But in doing that, we did not, for whatever reason, give them the actual field that is there. Now, full disclosure, they've been under the impression that they have that field because they have done some work on it. You remember a few years ago, they put some things there so that if you wanted to tailgate or park your camper, and then they would show you to the Clemson games because, space was becoming, they were renting out spaces on it. They do the 4th of July festival out there and the fireworks and the music and that. So, and quite honestly, I thought that they owned it too, until we went and, till a surveyor from Columbia came up because the National Guard building needs to make a little expansion. Well, when he was surveying it, he couldn't find the right lines, and he went through a lot of trouble, and he came up here and met with me, and we went down to Bountyland campus to dig through the files, and we found it, and, we sent him back to Columbia, and he still was working on it. So there was a meeting a couple of weeks ago that Dr. Thorson attended for me, and they met with the National Guard folks, the folks from the city of Seneca, and the school district, and basically what came out of that was they need a little bit of our property, the current field property, to back up the fence for the National Guard property, which we really honestly don't have a problem with. It's back behind the end zone. We don't do anything with it, and there's, it's kind of odd. But we looked at it, and the city of Seneca did ask us about it. They've been using it for soccer, different things. We just feel like there's nothing we can think of where we'll have a use for that field in between those buildings and that lower area which they have. I think this is where they're going to put the amphitheater that they're talking about building too. So we just feel like that it's in our best interest because if somebody were to get hurt out there could be some liability issues, and we don't even use the field really, but it's in our name, and so we would like to go ahead and give that to the city of Seneca as well while we're doing these things, and get that whole Gillette area over there under the control of the city of Seneca.
Steve, I'm like you, I thought it already belonged.
Yeah, I did too. I went back and looked, and it was crazy because they cut the grass. They were over there. I think the day Dr. Thorson rode by there, they were working on the steps and the stands and that. So basically, they have been upkeeping it with the understanding. So I think that all that's missing is really doing the paperwork to get it to them. So we would like to ask that you all vote on that, and we give that to the city of Seneca as well. Again, we've thought about it. Nothing we can use it for.
It's about 2 acres probably, a little bit more than a football field.
You can't build a school in there, can you?
No, sir. No, sir.
Nor would we want to build one.
And Northside doesn't need it to go across there for PE, and that we just can't figure it out. We talked about a few things, but there's nothing. And if they're going to put that other stuff out there and they're already maintaining it, we just felt like the right thing to do was to give it to them with your approval.
Actually, they already have it.
Basically, you're right. We're officially giving it to them. So.
All right, any other questions for Candy?
Give stuff away.
All right, Ms. Simmons, the 23-24 strategic plan update.
Last year, if you remember, we created our initial 5-year plan. So this will be our first year that we're able to report out any data based on the baseline data that we worked from last year. So I'm going to go through the different sections, but just kind of tell you what we haven't had to change due to it being an update. And then whatever questions you might have, feel free to ask those. So on the signature page, that was the first page, one change that will be made is Jennifer Rich. She will be our District Read Succeed Literacy Leadership Team Lead because she took Lauren Harrison's place, but I was that person last year till we got that filled for this year. So that will be one change that we will make. As far as the assurances section, none of that has changed at all. And then on the stakeholder section, we leave all those names the same just because those are the individuals who were part of the stakeholder involvement when we created the initial plan. The district waiver for requesting strategic plan wavering, that does not apply to us. We don't ask for any kind of wavering of submitting a plan. And then also, the State Department does not ask us to make any changes to our needs assessment data or executive summary of needs assessment data findings, because that's the data that we based off the setting of our performance goals on. So you're able to, go back and look at that to see what we used to set the initial 5-year plan. Then we get to the performance goals section. That is where we do make our plans for changing some things there just based on the data that we have. So when we set our performance goals, we have those listed out. And then we also have our data sources that we look at each year. And then last year, we set our baseline, what our projected data would be, hopefully where we would meet this year, and then our increments out that match this statement in the performance goals. So our first performance goal is based on student achievement. And we were looking in grades 3, 4, and 5 at English language arts performance. And we were also looking at the meet and exceeds range categories for those grade levels. And we had a 1.2 percentage points increase for 3rd grade, 2.8 for 4th grade, and 1.8 for 5th grade. You can see that we actually went down in 3rd grade from our projected baseline, but then we have reworked our percentages to still get us to what we would hope to be at the end of the 5-year plan. In 4th grade, we were right there at our projected percentage that we wanted to be at. And then 5th grade, we were well above what our projection was supposed to be for this year at 48%. So you can see how we have adjusted those goals. Since this is our first year that we report out from our original baseline data, we haven't made any changes to our action plan just because we've just really started working on these goals. But I do know when I came into this position, we did add 2 action plans as our 5-year increment went on, because sometimes we had new initiatives that were started that we could then reflect in our action plans as well. So do know that we haven't made any changes to those action plans at this point, but that is an option to do as we move through the 5-year plan. Okay, so our next one was for our middle school data. We chose to focus on math with our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And you can see in our SMART goal performance areas, we were also looking at meet and exceeds range, 1.1 percentage points for 6th grade, 1.6 for 7th, and 2.0 for 8th. And we surpassed our actual projected data in all 3 of those grade levels at this point in our strategic plan. Okay, then we're going to be moving on to high school. Algebra 1 EOC is where we were focusing on reaching 80 by the end of 2027. We increased slightly from our projected average baseline. We just were shy of meeting that projected data goal of 70.9 with a 69.4. We did some major reconstructing of our timelines for Algebra 1, working with all of our Algebra 1 teachers at the end of last year in correlation with Mr. Garrett. He was the principal that was part of that group. So we're hoping to continue to see, increased improvement with Algebra 1 scores. And Ms. Crane has been doing a lot of work with that department at the 3 high schools as well. So wanted to show you that. So, I am pleased that we've seen some increase. That is an area that we need to continue to grow in. Now, our other student achievement goal that we had set for the high schools was graduation rate by 1.25% each year. We did go down to 81.8%. I know that a lot of conversations that we've had is based around attendance. We're also looking at that recovery of seat time presently for the upcoming school year. And also looking at our content and credit recovery policies with our high school principals as well. But the attendance piece is extremely important when it comes to graduation rate at the high school level, with making sure that they are attending class for the required amount of seat time needed to be able to finish out the course and obtain credit for that. So we'll be continuing to work on that, as our goal is to reach 86.8% by the end of the plan. So those were our student achievement performance goals. And then we are moving to our teacher administrator quality goal. We use, for this goal, our teacher and student opinion survey results. Again, our goal is to get to 90% or greater. So we have the lofty goal of trying to get to 95% by the end of the 27 year. We're looking at the agree and strongly agree categories, specifically in the area of learning environment. If you've seen the questions that are on the teacher and student surveys, even the parent surveys, there's some differences, but they're all mostly built around instruction, standards-based instruction, very similar type topics in all of those. We did go down 84.2% from 87.4%. And again, those are survey results that Dr. Lorslin and Mr. Hamby review with the principals before every school year to see what are specific areas that can be targeted. Some of our elementary schools actually have specific statements within the learning environment or the social and physical environment that they are working on in their individual school plans, because those may be their lowest performing areas too. So we're hoping that this next year that we'll see some improvement in that particular category. All right, and then our next one is on school climate, really talking about parent involvement and safe and healthy schools. And we did go up to 84.2 from 83.9. I think we're just going to continue to go up from here because we're back from COVID. We're getting more parent involvement back in our schools. We are continuing to talk about social emotional learning with our students as far as on the bullying side, and we just talked about that with our elementary principals, with our Alveus program, just kind of getting back on track with, those types of initiatives within our buildings and getting our parents back involved as well. All right, and then we have two gifted and talented goals. One is based on academic performance of all of our gifted students who are identified. And the other goal we have is reducing the gap in our Black, Hispanic, and American Indian/Alaskan subgroups, and working towards building the percentage of gifted students in these subgroups to match the percentage that they actually represent in our general population. Gifted and talented is a challenging area to continue to grow. We have a lot of students who are already very high performing, so continuing to increase the percentage points on the proficiency report within our NWA MAP testing, that can be a challenge a lot of times with getting them to meet those goals. One thing that I did want to report about is pre-COVID, our gifted and talented sector of the State Department, we haven't had much professional development. They hadn't had their conference, things like that. But in the last meeting that I went to, they're looking at getting a lot of that reinstated for the upcoming school year. So I am excited to see that coming back. One great thing that we were able to do this year is our region gets funding. And so the GT coordinators in our region did get some representation from Clemson University to do professional development with our science standards. And science is a big piece, especially on our state report card for our schools. And so that was some unexpected professional development that our teachers were able to participate in. We're also really looking at our common formative assessments, our benchmark assessments that we've just started, especially in middle school this year. And our elementary schools are at different places with that as well, but just looking at depths of knowledge and rigorous questioning strategies, those types of things. And then also last year we just started being able to offer the GT endorsement courses for teachers with our Title II funding through Converse College. So we're going to continue to be able to do that just to get more of our teachers through those endorsement courses that work with our gifted population. But some great news in our subgroup data for gifted. We went up in all three areas. Our Black identified students went from 1.8% to 2.89%, Hispanic 2.82% to 3.35%, and then our American Indian / Alaskan 0.11 to 0.25. So we are seeing an increase in the subgroup representation within our gifted and talented population. So we're hoping to see that continue to increase as well. Any questions on any of those performance goals?
I've got a few, but I didn't know if anybody else had something else before I did have a few questions. So in our student achievement under the executive summary page, okay, so it says here that, and I guess, some of these statistics are somewhat alarming. The one that I kind of highlighted here is in the fall of 2021, approximately 63% of our first grade students are behind in our reading. And so I know what we're using, the Fontes and Pinnell systems and the curriculum, and I've read a lot about, some of the concerns that this is not necessarily a research-based curriculum, and it's been more of a publishing company, marketing company, circle around some politics and education. I don't know, I've just read a lot about that particular curriculum, and I'm just curious, based on our action plans here, and as we move into board goals and we meet in a couple weeks to talk about goals for moving forward, is there something else that we should be using or should be paying attention to increase more phonics in the classrooms instead of just focusing on some of this that's in?
Yes, in down towards the last paragraph, we're actually also using Hegarty, which is phonemic awareness, phonics based, and we have that in grades K1, and we do have that being used in second grade in some of our schools as well. The other piece of F&P Classroom is the phonics and word study piece. There is a piece within that curriculum. This is probably our first year that we've really been able to dive into that. And so we do know that there's probably going to need to be, some tweaking, additional things that we are looking at with the phonics and word study. But we're well aware of the Science of Reading initiative coming down from the State Department. We've been in meetings, myself and Jennifer Rich, with that. We met with Dr. Thorsland. We have a proposal put together on how we're going to be addressing the Science of Reading initiative. There are many components of F&P Classroom that are still considered Science of Reading components. In addition to the Heggerty that we're using and some changes we may be using within the phonics and word study piece, I feel really confident about our proposal. One other piece of that is just really needing to educate our teachers about what Science of Reading is and what that shift looks like. It's not necessarily a complete change from what we're doing, but there's shifts to some things that we'll need to be doing instructionally. And so we plan to hit that hard with K1 and 2 next year with a book study on shifting the balance. So that's something that y'all could look into because we feel like our teachers really need a good solid foundation on what Science of Reading really means, and to be able to see that a lot of what they are doing is not going to be heavy changes based on that. But I think just the shifts that we're making there, plus the continued use of Heggerty, some tweaks we might make to phonics and word study, I think we're going to be in a really good place with that.
So there was a 4 or 5 hour series of podcasts that probably precipitated a lot of what you read, and I've listened to that, and I came in after listening to that, and Lisa and I had several conversations about that. So we do have a plan to move much more heavily towards Science of Reading, but I do think I agree with Lisa. It can be shifts, and we're already doing a lot of it.
Yeah, I know that we spent a lot of money on this curriculum. I know why it was pushed, and I certainly understand from a classroom perspective, you fall in love with it, as many people have and many districts have. But then, the data just shows that students they're not learning to read, they're memorizing words. And so I think I would just like to see us in the next 5 years, just as we grow in our action plan and grow in our goals, making phonics more of a priority.
Yeah, and really, like our F&P Classroom, this is our first year really using that curriculum with more fidelity. Last year was their opportunity to get to know it, work with their coaches, and they're continuing to work with their reading coaches. But I also think it would be great if I could get Jennifer Rich to send out the other resources and data that kind of supports both sides of the situation. And that way you could also read about all of that as well.
And we can share more of that plan for next year too, as we shift towards full implementation of Science of Reading.
The other small thing that I have, and I know you'll have to get this approved, so certainly, anything that we have to do tonight can be small minor changes that we amend later. In the school climate performance goal, do we have anything, I didn't see anything in there about engaging parents. I know we have the message system in there, we have, the phone calls and the emails. I love that, and I'm just gonna call on James and Brown, for instance, how they've engaged their parents through that watchdog program. I think having some sort of action in school climate to engage parents, not just the communication to parents, would be ideal.
And a lot of that is probably in their school level plans, but I could make a generalized statement in the action plan for that, and then I can also go back in and add in some of the things with the shifting the balance and the proposal for the action plans, also for the student achievement part. I think I can definitely go back in and put those things in there.
That works for me.
Okay, great. All right, and then our gifted and talented required tables, it just talks about kind of like our policies and practices, our screenings, identification, none of that has changed, so there's no updates to be put there. On our district proficiency-based system plan evaluation, all 3 of our high schools and Oconee Academy just went in and made any tweaks that they needed to make as far as how they offer proficiency-based courses through like Apex, through Virtual SC. Some are doing some credit recovery through our virtual SDOC franchise as well. I've listed all the different types of courses that have been taken through proficiency-based systems, the number of students that took them, and the number of students who actually earn credit from those courses, the list of the certified teachers. Some of those are not our teachers, they're just teachers through Virtual SC, but all of those are listed there as well. And one thing in talking about our credit and content recovery policy, we talked about maybe trying to utilize the content recovery part a little more, like within the moment that students could potentially be struggling with particular content within a unit, those types of things to try to keep them moving. And that would really address the maybe the struggling student side of proficiency-based systems. Okay, and then the very last thing we had is our 2023 district summer school program site identification. These are the sites that will be offering like summer school type programming this year. Northside Elementary will be our Read to Succeed, where our summer reading camp will take place. And Jennifer Neal is our new director for that. So she's been busy coordinating all sorts of things for that for the upcoming summer here. Seneca Middle, Walhalla Middle, and West Stoke Middle will all be offering promotion type summer school programming at their buildings as well. And you can see those site administrators there. Any other questions for me? Yeah, I called April. Yeah. Okay.
All right. No questions? I will go on to Child Development 1, South Carolina Honors Framework.
All right, I just wanted you all to be aware and informed that the Career Center has submitted an honors framework for Child Development 1 honors. Carson, again, really excited about being able to offer this opportunity, so they've submitted the honors framework and the core syllabus for this class. This is a great honors class for students. They're really held to the highest standards, you know, as far as getting them moving in the right direction of education. In the syllabus, you'll see some prerequisites there that the students in 11th or 12th grade, they need to have a 3.0 GPA and then also recommendation from their counselor. But they'll be participating in a really intense 80-hour internship that places them in an early childhood classroom where they're able to interact with the students. They're able to prepare and teach lessons within those classrooms as well. And then they also earn a lot of different types of certifications during the process. So South Carolina 15 Health and Safety Pre-Service Certification, CPR certification. They're going to earn 10 hours in the Love and Logic classroom management training, which will be very good for them as they move forward into the education field. And then Microburst employability soft skills certification, which will be extremely helpful as well. All sorts of instructional strategies within this course, from lecturing to peer collaboration, literature circles, online discussions, observations, and then they'll be able to also interact with some guest instructors that will be coming. And then as far as assessments, some different formative and summative assessments, some actually measuring industry standards. They'll have lesson plan templates they'll be turning in. They'll be creating a portfolio along the way. They'll have different contracts and expectations for their work-based learning, self-assessments and peer assessments, and then they'll have a final presentation on their internship experience. So And then students that are completing this course, they'll come away with some great real-world experience and exposure to all facets of teaching young children.
And in spite of this being called Child Development 1, it's not the first course in the
Right.
sequence. They do have other courses that are prerequisites, so otherwise it would not fit the honors requirements.
Any questions about this? All right. We move on to our action items, and our first one is, are y'all comfortable on voting on the Cut Elementary property tonight? Anybody have anything that, any further? All right. Then I will entertain a motion that, we allow either Dr. Thorsland or Mr. Hamby to move ahead with changing the deed, the reverter clause to the city of Seneca rather than, is that correct? Or just take it?
It's I think the legal
A quick
term is a
claim.
quick claim deed,
Okay.
which we would just basically be saying we no longer want any ties to that property.
All right. Okay.
Second.
So we have a motion to allow either Dr. Thorsland or Mr. Handy to go ahead and make the quick claim deed to take our name out of that property completely. So, any more discussion? All in favor? All right. All right, and our second one, the general field property, to entertain a motion to deed the about 2 acres of property to the city of Seneca that is the general field property.
So moved.
Second? Questions, comments? All in favor? On the 23-24 strategic plan that needs to be voted on before the end of the month, are y'all comfortable in voting on it with the amendments that have been suggested, that they're completed? Dr. Ketchum, are you not comfortable with that? All right, then, again, a motion that we accept the 23-24 strategic plan with the changes that have been, that Mrs. Simmons has agreed to make tonight.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? All right, and now we have the first reading of the FY24 general fund budget. And again, this is just the approval of on the first reading. We will have opportunities to make changes, and there still may be changes from the state, so, but this is to this is to get us started in that direction. So, do I have a motion to approve on first reading the FY24 general fund budget?
So moved.
All in favor? All right, and then we have several policies. Let's put the first two together. A motion to pass on second reading, final approval policy, GCLE, unencumbered time, and policy GCLE-R, unencumbered time. And I don't think anybody needs any update on those. Those are pretty much mandated for us. Okay. All right, all in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, did somebody make a motion? No. I need a motion.
I'll make it.
Okay. All right, all in favor? And then finally, policy HBG homeschooling. Again, second reading, final approval. A motion, please.
Second.
All in favor? All right, now we have some time set aside for board member comments, if anyone has anything they'd like to share. All right, if not, then this ends our regular meeting, and I will have a motion to go into executive session for personnel items, employment recommendations and changes, and also professional contract for the 2023-2024 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.